Hey everybody, Scout Crafty here again. It's Monday, Mishmash Monday. We're back in the shop. Love to be back in the shop, as you know. And, we had a good week last week. We had a couple nice restorations. Remember, we did everything last week in that little 4-foot by 4-foot section. So I think we did a pretty good job in a smaller area. And you don't need a big area, so it's always a great time to have and get into the shop. So today we got a few things to start with. First of all, I want to start off, a few people asking me about the shellacking of the handle. Let's get right to that. Okay, so some people were asking about how I apply the additional coats of shellac to the handle, and that's a good question because that can make or break how the handle looks. And let me just go through first a couple types of handles. Like, for example, if all my outdoor tools, that means anything I use and leave in the garage or outside, I use just linseed oil. This is a linseed oil coating. It'll attract dirt. It will give you this look, kind of a dirty look, but it's very good for you. Very soft on the hands. It's good protection. You just put it on once a year after it's been on for a while, and that's a good protectant. So I use linseed oil for all my outdoor handles. For my indoor handles, for things I'm not going to be using a lot, like for example here, this short handle ball peen. Now, I've been using this for over a year. This was just a shellac coating, and you see here, it gives a beautiful finish on there. It doesn't attract dirt. Very good, very soft on the hands, but you're not handling this all day. You're not using it like if you're doing farm work. So, but I love this finish, shellac finish, and I never did anything since. If you want, you could put a butcher wax once a year or something, but now we have to put the second coat on here. I only did one coat. I like to do 2 coats of shellac followed by a coat of butcher's wax. So what we did now, you could see here, it has kind of a shine to it. Now, before you put your second coat of shellac on, you want to knock off that shine, and I'll show you how you do it. Now, to get to this point here, what we did was we put the gun stock stain on, let that dry, then 1 coat of shellac, let that dry. That's where we're at now, okay? So we have 1 coat of gun stock, 1 coat of shellac. Now, what we're going to take a piece of 000 steel wool. That's 3/0 steel wool. Just tear a small piece off. And the reason I tear small pieces off is because you'll waste a lot if you use this whole piece like this. Just you only need a very small piece like this, okay? Now, what you want to do is you want to go over this shellac. And you'll see what it will do is it'll create a white powder. You'll start to pick up a white powder. That's the shellac that you're just taking off the top. And you're going to go over it lightly, and you're going to dull any area that you see that's shiny. And you're just going to go through this whole thing until this whole handle is dull again. And that's prepared for your second coat of bullseye shellac. That's what I use, bullseye clear shellac. And then we'll just put that on 1, 2, 3 with a little piece of paper towel and just wipe it on real quick, and then let it heat on top of the burner. And what I do is I take a board with a hole in it like this, place it in here like that, and let this rest over the vents of the burner so it gets nice and warm. And that's all there is to it. It's 1, 2, 3. Okay, now what we did is we just went over it with this is a wet coat of shellac. That's my second coat. When this totally dries, I will go over it very lightly again with this small piece of swatch of 000 steel wool, just to dull it down just a little bit, and then I'll put a coat of butcher's wax on, and that'll give a nice finish. But this is too shiny. You wouldn't want, unless you like this, but normally I like it to look a little bit more dulled down. Okay, so here we are the next day. This is totally dry. It's been dry for 24 hours on the front. You can see now that's an acceptable finish. It's nice. It's shellac. It's a little bit darker because remember this was the coal hammer handle that had the darkness here. But what we're going to do now is we're going to dull it out a little bit with that steel wool, and I'll show you. You get a little bit of a different look, you know. It's not so shiny, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, now we used that small piece of steel wool, and we dulled out. You see, we got rid of that real shine of here, and it's a more classic look, right? It looks more like what you would want it to look. But you still see little bits of that white powder from the shellac getting into small imperfections. Now what we're going to do is we're going to wipe it with a little mineral spirits just to get rid of that white dust. This is after the mineral spirits. You can see now we're getting that classic look, right? That handle that looks like it's 100 years old, right? You could still see the grain through there. Isn't that beautiful? All the white dust. Now we're going to put a little bit of butcher's wax on there, and that's it. That'll be we'll be finished. So now this is the butcher's wax or Boston polish to amber paste. Well, I love this stuff. I mean, this is fantastic. Been around since 1880. God knows when I got this one, but we're going to open this up. I'm going to snip it for a little while, and then we're going to put it on. Now, whenever you're going to apply this, again, a small piece of paper. This is damp, just very damp with water. And you just put a little bit on here like this. You don't need much, okay? Just a little bit on here. See, like that. Pick it up. And this stuff lasts such a long time because it's a hard wax. And then you're just going to put it on here. And you can see how it goes on. It'll look like a cloudiness, you know. And you just wipe this on like this all the way around the handle. And then you're going to give it a few minutes. It don't take long until this clouds up and it'll become almost like a dry powder. And then you're going to buff it off with a quick buffing with paper towel. Okay, you see now it's a cloudy. It's a kind of a, you know, you see that cloud? That's the wax on there. Take that paper towel, and we're going to give it, now you're going to build up almost like a little bit of a heat as you're buffing it off here. And when you, almost like when you're shining a shoe. And what happens is it's going to almost burnish that wax into the handle, and that's what you're going to wind up with. Look at that. Come on, it doesn't get any better than that. Okay, there we go. Now we are finished, and you can see what that looks like. Now this will dull out a little bit over time because, you know, when your hands are using it and things like that, but it's not slippery at all, has a beautiful feel to it, and, you know, it just looks classic, you know. This is the way I like it. You know, you can see all the grain in there, and, but it still has a sheen to it. Can we take a minute to appreciate that when you bake on that red paint, how that looks? Isn't that beautiful? That's a brush paint. Now, the last thing we're going to do is we're going to put a little linseed oil over the top here, but I'm giving this about a week and a half or 2 weeks to dry the paint because, you know, enamel paint dries from the inside out. So you just give it time before you start putting any chemical. But then we'll put a little linseed oil on the top there. And that's it. We are done. Okay, next up, I got something, a little bit of a show and tell for you. I bought this at Jacktown, one of the first years I went there. And I knew the guy. He was a machinist. And I said, what is this? And he says, oh, that thing. He says, that's expensive. But he says, this came out of like a B-29. And it had something to do with power generation or something, he says. And one of his machinist buddies made a handle for it and made it into like a hand crank generator. So he says, that puts out some juice. And I said, really? I said, you know, he wanted 20 bucks for it. And at the time, you know, the 20 bucks in Jacktown buys a lot. But I said, you know, I just like it. I like it. So I bought it, right? Now, this is years ago. I came home, I hooked it up to an AC meter. You got to see what this puts out. Well, first of all, I tried it with my fingers. You know, I held the two ends and I got a tremendous shock. Let me show you what this thing puts out. Okay, now I have this hooked up to an AC meter, alternating current. You can see it goes up to 300 volts AC, you know. Our average is about 120 over here in our current here. But I'm going to show you, I'm going to turn this and watch the meter, what it reads when and how fast I'm turning this when I turn, okay? Now here it is. I'm just turning it. Let me get over here so I'm not hitting the wire. Okay, look at this. I'm already at 60 volts, right? Now I'm going to go a little bit fast. Now I'm at, this is about house current here, about 120 volts, and I'm not even doing 1 revolution per second, right? Per second, yeah. And now watch this. I could go easily over 300 volts, and I'm not even turning it that fast. Now, I'm telling you, if I was to touch those two leads and just give it a quick turn, it gives you a zap like house current does. It's amazing. So I was going to build a box with a handle on, a brass handle, and I was going to have a toggle switch. And when I was, you know, you would spin it to see how fast you go. Then I'd have a dummy light bulb and say, see if you could light the light bulb. When they threw the switch, it was going to go into the handle and give them a shock. But I said, I'll wind up killing somebody because this thing will shock the heck out of you. Have you ever seen anything like this before? Look at that current, that the voltage that this thing's putting out. Look at this. I'm at 200 AC volts, and I'm not even spinning it that fast. Pretty amazing, isn't it? I wonder what kind of dynamo this is. Okay, next up, I have to do this because I wanted to do this for a while. This is a Proto 2116 is the model number. Proto. And this is a combination of a like a bearing puller, kind of a pry bar. You can use it for so many things, a drift punch. However, somebody was banging and did a no-no. They did a no-no. Now, you could make this tip any way you want. That's the beauty of customizing a tool or something. I am a big pry bar, you know, drift, all punch. I love this kind of stuff. And it's overlooked by so many people. So what you see, it's, you know, it's got some, you know, rust and things like that on here. But we're going to do this up nice. Let's get to it real quick. We did a quick wire brush just to see what's underneath. And you could see here, you could see the facets, you know, they're dulled out on purpose, you know, but it's a strange grind on here. Somebody was at it with a grinding wheel. You see, that's a grind wheel. The difference between a flat sander or a belt sander and a grind wheel, you could see they tried to, you know, sharpen this up, I guess, to make it a, you know, that's common. You see that. And again, tools are made to customize for whatever you need it for, but you know, this here is a and I can make that into a point. I can make it into anything I want. Let's see what we want to do, how we feel, you know. And you know my favorite part, remember what this Proto 2116 looked like before we started? And we're calling this project done, and I was thinking, I'm the only guy on YouTube doing pry bars and crowbars. It's ridiculous, right? But I just love them. And if you can't appreciate this tool, you've never used one, because once you use one of these, it is the most useful tool, one of the most useful tools. Let's take a look at what we did. First of all, I filled in the Proto with a little red, Scoutcrafter red. Remember with the back, we reground it over here. Look at how nice that looks, right? Both sides, front and back. All the facets I did over, and look at that. Isn't that just beautiful? Now, here's something I'm pretty proud of. First of all, the tip. See what we did with the tip here? You know, I rounded. It's still got a flat bottom, but it's slightly round. So if you know, sometimes you got to get in there. It helps you get in and then open up, you know, what a drift punch is meant to do until it gets wide. Look at the transition between the round and the facets. Can you see that? You know, all every one of them comes down to an even point. That's just a real, it's a little point that you don't really think about, but it just makes it look so classic, this tool. Such a beautiful tool. You know, Proto made some great stuff. They were out in Los Angeles. And this 2116 is a bar you would not take a second look at when it's all rusty. But look at this now. Just something, if you've ever done any kind of work with anything and you had to align a couple holes, this is the tool that, you know, you're going to reach for. What a fantastic tool. I really love it. Beautiful, right? Okay, so in closing, we were kind of all over the place today. Really enjoyed doing that Proto bar. I love doing that stuff. And, you know, it's a challenge to get those facets right. And that's the fun of it. That's where the fun comes in. And I hope you enjoyed it too. And I want you to take a moment and appreciate this visual that I saw this morning when I woke up. I looked out the window and I saw the Old Glory blowing in the wind and with the blue sky. And I said, I have to take a picture for you to see, because I hope you appreciate it as much as I do. I just love those colors. My heart swells every time I see it. And anyway, I hope you have a great day. Take care now. See you again on Wednesday. Bye-bye.